Hello and welcome to Art Out of Nature, Harrison's Cave, Barbados. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. As always, I'm pleased that you have chosen to spend the next 30 minutes with my guest. In last week's program, we introduced you to architect Steve Devenish and his team that worked on the redevelopment of Harrison's Cave. He started by walking us through the steps taken to ensure that they were able to deliver a product appropriate for the 21st century and with the expected carrying capacity. We ended by talking about their efforts at procuring the new trams and the special arrangement with the contract. At this time, project manager Steve Devenish is sitting in his office in Sturgis and managing a design project that has tentacles back in Welshman Hall and all the way in the UK. How was he able to do this?
We had a system where we would always go up and do inspection and testing before things are freighted down, and that was the structure behind the contract. And then, as if that wasn't enough, World Cup came along and the government determined that we should open for World Cup, even though the project was not designed in any shape or fashion to accommodate for World Cup. So we had to renegotiate with the tram suppliers to get the trams to Barbados in time for World Cup. So we took a chance and brought them ahead of testing. So most of the testing occurred in Barbados, and luckily that was successful. So we got past that one. And basically, Hayden Workman and Schofield Clark and myself, we were the three who would visit the manufacturers and return to Barbados, and we were to go between.
Now, evidently, there was great risk involved in this process. Here was a project manager and his team acting on behalf of the government and people of Barbados, seeking to procure the most appropriate tram and using a company in a country where the exchange rate could float daily, and where the tram manufacturer was a relatively small company, and the cave did not have a record of conducting business with it.
It was really a high-risk project because you were dealing with a company that was small, had the technology, but not the money. The pound floats against the dollar, so sometimes when you transfer money, you have to bargain for the difference and things like that. And it was a lot of pressure because there was a point in the project where we could not turn back, where we'd abandon the old vehicles. So even if you want to abandon this contract, you would have Harrison's Cave reopen it with no vehicles. So we were in that midpoint where you only got enough fuel to get back to shore to go ahead. So we just kept going, and that propelled us a lot. And I think the product that we got out of it is a good one. Already the improvements I think we can make to the next fleet. One of the things we were considering then was that if we could have excited or involved other aspects of Barbadian transport life to, instead of building 5, build 10, 15, or 20, but that was not to be, and we ended with the vehicle that we have now, purpose designed, purpose built. We had a chance to see how manufacturers work, and we got a first class lesson in communications. I remember one day we had a very animated discussion with the consultants, because when we traveled to the UK, we would set up our offices in the hotel, our temporary offices, boardroom, and they would come and see us, and they presented some information to us and tell us it's all there, and we went back, and going through this stuff, we came to the conclusion that the information was deficient. So we summoned the people to our meeting room the next morning. They said, but it's there and it's not there, it's there and it's not there. And I said, but these people can't be looking me in the eye and telling lies. And then we stopped and went back to basic. What is it you're communicating to us? And then we discovered that there was a program called SolidWorks, which anybody at all dealing with manufactured vehicles should know. So as far as these people are concerned, if these guys come here to buy vehicles, they know the language. And we didn't have a clue, never heard of the program before, man. And then the guys purchased a lower grade version of it and gave it to us, and we were able to access the information. And then we discovered that the information which we were seeking was presented to us, but we had no method and no technique of exploring the information. So that was one of the Communications 101, and it was a bit embarrassing, but nevertheless educational. And then we got the program, the SolidWorks program, where we were able to pull the vehicle on a screen, pull off a wheel, put back on a wheel, rotate it, and examine it. And then we realized all the information which they were claiming that they had given to us, we actually had in our possession. But we could not access it because we were just not bright enough.
Now, issues of the tram settled, the team turns its attention to the buildings.
We have the buildings that most people see now at Harrison's Cave. That was also another intriguing exercise because the construction part of what people see was challenging in many respects, in that we were setting off on a fairly extensive program. At that point in time, there was a lot of building construction going on in Barbados. We also had a very tight timeline, and we came across a couple of challenges in that the cliff top facilities, there were some places in excavation you can go down 15, 20 feet and no meet solid rock, so that threw us a little bit. And then we also had the issue of putting lifts, external lifts on a glass front elevators on an external wall, which had not been tried too often in Barbados before, and there will always be the issue of moisture and all these other things. But we went through that design thoroughly to get that right. And the other issue was, once you have this redevelopment, how do you manage in such a way that people will not still have the expectation of driving to the mouth of the cave and going in and coming back? Because one of the principles behind the redevelopment was that we were going to set up a facility in St. Thomas. When you leave Warrens, you come to Harrison's Cave and you can buy newspaper. That was the concept behind it. And when we conceived the redevelopment in the early days, a lot of establishments were not kind to cruise ship passengers. And I remember attending a CTC conference in Barbados where we spoke to Gene Page and the executive people from the FCC, Florida Caribbean Cruise Association. And they were very much in favor of what we were doing, where we saw it as a facility that you can leave the port by taxi, come here, settle, and then redistribute and visit other parts of the country. That was one of the concepts. And hence the idea of to provide commercial space and opportunity for the Harrison's Cave. As you know, in most attractions, people make more money from memorabilia and the facilities itself. The entrance fee is just an additional bonus. So the space you see there now, about 60% of that space is commercial opportunity, and that was the intention behind it. It was felt that if you get back to the numbers of 200,000 a year, that's a captive market. And the carrying capacity calculated for the cave was 325,000 people a year. And it was felt that at 325,000 people a year, or even at 200,000 a year, you have a captive market, and therefore from a restaurant, shopping, exhibition, commercial space. So the idea then would be to have it like Harrison's Caves and Gardens. So you're going to this place where it is also a cave on a tram tour, but there are other things you can do. And we felt that would excite those who might have seen Harrison's Cave on more than one occasion. So those were the overall strategic approach behind the significant redevelopment. And then we also felt it was important to bring the concept of interpretation so that it becomes not only scientific, but it also becomes educational. And we draw from things within the community. So you will see a lot of the interpretive information is drawn from the community, where you show people how this place is located and where it's located. You pull from the communities. I remember again having a bit of a battle with some people at one stage when we were looking to develop posters. And a lot of the posters for Harrison's Cave there where you bring in a model and you got somebody posed into the cave. And we said, no, why not use regular people in Barbados? And that was a bit of a battle. And you can go to Harrison's Cave now and see images of people in the hall when they were probably 5'7", and now those people are adults. So you recognize the generation. People can see their families, their mothers, their fathers. And we felt that was important to truly have a sense of ownership. If you use a model and you just change the images, you're creating an image that doesn't really exist. Get the regular people, have images of people working within their community, exhibited within Harrison's Cave, and that is one way you can cement the trust you would have developed through the community participation. So the development process was extensive. It was a bit disruptive at times because we had work up to contend with. We had a couple other setbacks, but the facilities were completed nevertheless, and it still remains an excellent display in architecture and interpretation.
In last week's program, we heard about the team's insistence on communities' involvement at all stages of the development, an approach that ultimately redounds to the benefit of all involved and future generations also. Steve now speaks about the design of the layout and what they were hoping to achieve.
The entire facility is designed around how do you take a tour from the time you enter the car park till you get down to the heart of the cave and back out. The designers worked out a route for the tour. And one of the strategies in the design was to ensure that if we had problems, we can manage them behind the scenes. So you wouldn't see if a tram is broken, or you wouldn't see the tram drive into the workshop. So the tram storage building was on the Cliff Stops facilities, and we worked in such a way that the maintenance of the vehicles would take place out of sight. And when you put tours together, it's almost in the scheduling that if that tour is slowed up in the valley floor, you can control at the lift. If it's a problem that you can control in the arrivals hall, you can control in the presentation hall, you can control in the roundabout. So there are various places that you can manage the flow of traffic if you get to the heady heights of 250, 260,000 people. We had to design for the maximum. We couldn't design for the trickle, because if you design for the trickle, you'll be back to where you started in the beginning. So by designing for the maximum, it is a facility that has an optimum capacity, 325,000 a year. That is possible. But it is for the tourism sectors and the various players to get together and allow that to occur, because tourism packages change. The cruise ship is still there. Bus tours are still there. And we also saw Harrison's Cave not only as Harrison's Cave as a redeveloped product. The name of the product was Harrison's Cave and Associated Sites. So we saw Flower Forest, Jack in the Box, Welsh Mohawk Gully, and the community are all sites within the heart of Barbados. So you were coming to a community and a part of Barbados that was separate and distinct from the rest of Barbados, and offered a collection of attractions, all outdoor, all natural. And that was the concept behind the heart of Barbados, and also the redevelopment of Harrison's Cave.
The emphasis once again is on community and heritage tourism. The entire flow carefully thought out, not only here on the compound of Harrison Cave, but in the neighbouring communities as well: Allen View, Holy Innocents, Sturgis, Welshman Hall. These communities are now open up and welcoming thousands of visitors annually. There's a road network in place on which the vehicles bringing the tourist would travel. But what about sidewalks? What about those areas for the residents and the children to walk safely instead of having to compete with the vehicles for road space?
Well, when we looked at the redevelopment package, and as I said, we were designing for maximum success. And one of the things we recognize, if all the things we expect to hold through, then you will have increased traffic, increased vehicle traffic. The Welshman Hall artery takes you over to the East Coast. And there's a school located, there's a church located here. And prior to the redevelopment, you can have traffic and children competing. And one of the things we appended to the redevelopment was the inclusion of a sidewalk pavement from Allen View community right through to Holy Innocent Church and extended down to the school. The reason for that was that we felt you should not have a situation where primary school children are dodging tour buses to get to school. There should be some level of comfort. And I'm pleased to see that on a daily basis now as I drive up here. You see children skipping and playing in their own zone on the pavement, meandering their way down to school. Now, most people look at that and think it's just regular road development, but that was part of the concept for the redevelopment of Harrison's Cave. It was Harrison's Cave and associated sites. And it was also an issue of providing for the community. And therefore, you can have a tangible output which is not generally associated with physical redevelopment of property being one of the benefits for the redevelopment process.
And so the sidewalks were constructed in the communities leading from Holy Innocents School directly to Harrison's Cave. Now, the cave's redevelopment was inextricably linked to the development in the community. Out of this birthed a special project that engendered a greater sense of community, and one which returned that community-spirited nature of the people. A people in touch with its community, all because the development was done from within and not from outside and later foisted on the people.
The Heart of Barbados, as a concept, as I said, started as a pilot project within the study. And we then continued to run that for a series of years. But over the 10 to 12 years we were running that, it had significant developments. The first 2-3 years, we stabilized it. We developed a park and ride concept. And I must say, at this point, I got to give credit to Travis Sinkler, who's now the Senior Environmental Officer in the Ministry of Environment, and Amrika Singh, who's now with the CARICOM Secretariat. They were what I would call my transport specialists. They perfected the transport system where we had a series of buses and transport that would take people through the community during the Heart of Barbados days. And we had the bus stops and the bus stand, the bus shelter, the concept, and they really perfected that. And the idea behind the Heart of Barbados was that you will visit the area, you park your car by the post office, or you have the car park east of where we are. And we had our own shuttle service that would take you to Harrison's Cave, Latchmore Hall, Jack in the Box, and Springville Ecotourism Museum. And so here on number 1 Sturgis was the hub. So there's the bus stand where you get your ticket in. So we had signs up for ticketing and stuff like that. And that was perfected, and that worked very well. And each year we tried to add something onto it. And then one even strange enough, I was in conversation with a guy who was probably on the influence of a beverage and something else. And in his staggering voice, he said, "Skipper, what we want is a race." And I said, "All right, cool." And we came back and we thought about it. We contacted June Weather, who's a resident within the community, and she's well known with elite sports and stuff like that. And we came up with the concept of having a 5K walk and a 10K run. And we started off with about 30 people in one and 50 in the other. The first winner was Leo Garnes was the one. He went the wrong route, came back and passed with everybody, won the first race. All we had at that time to offer people was a group called Action Group. We had it in a bulk. So if you came first, you got 5. If you came second, you got 3. So all we were giving people was drink.
A number of things are important here. A community member who ordinarily and unfortunately so might have been disregarded was instead welcomed and entertained by Mr. Devonish. And this community member's idea was adopted by the Heart of Barbados Committee. There were no medals nor trophies to be awarded. However, at that time, no tangible award could have been equated with the sense of pride that was derived from community involvement.
But what was heartening was that the community came up for the walk in large numbers. And people came and people ran. And then it grew from there. And then it evolved to a stage where we started to invite participants from overseas. But we used that concept along with the bed and breakfast concept, where we would pay for the overseas athletes to come, but on condition that they stay in the residence within the community. So we got sponsorship with the airline ticket, but we paid for their accommodation. So you paid accommodation somebody in the community. So the people in the community hosted the overseas runners. And then people said, "Man, you bringing all the overseas people to Benbury races." But that was the concept behind it, to have a fine race. And it was not lost on people, because I remember the Jamaican distinctively remarking that he thought Barbados was flat. Because when he came and he saw the hills and thing, he was amused. And over the 10, 12 years of the Heart of Barbados series of races, many people came to try to conquer. And almost every year would hear people in the spectator section saying, "Boy, do that last year, not me again." So everybody would come with an intention to conquer it. And it was a good little competition set up between the hills and the people, which ran continuously.
Harrison's Cave and its associate sites. Out of this came the Heart of Barbados project that saw the involvement of community members in its planning, execution, and participation. Like the preparation for the constructions of the buildings here on the compound of the cave, this special project also required careful coordination and planning.
We also issued a standard shirt with the Heart of Barbados and stuff like that, because we wanted to bring a bit of color and we wanted to control the imagery of the race. The last one we had participation with people from UNEP, and that was also hosted on the UNEP website. And we were very successful with that. But we got numbers up to as much as 500. And what always was really pleasing to me is to see that 4 o'clock in the morning, people would leave the course and come out here to run this race. We had people who ran the race and then leave and go to work. We had people come and walk and leave and go back. And having such a race within the community was really heartwarming. I remembered one competitor say, "Man, I felt like stopping and going home, but when he went up, she went and said, 'Go long there, you ain't got long to go.'" She said, "I said, oh shoot," and she keep walking, because the community people encourage, and that was always a good event. And another component, as the Heart of Barbados evolved, was when Miss Reed returned from doing her postgraduate training, she introduced something called Heritage Night, where we have a talent show and everything on the Friday night. So the Heart of Barbados moved from being 2 days and 2 nights to 3 nights and 2 days, where we have not really a talent show, but an opening night, which was Heritage Night. And most, if not all, the actors were from within the community. Alessandra Ford worked a lot with us. Donnelly Carrington worked with us. Jennifer Walker worked with us. These were people who came and gave of their talents freely to give us guidance and advice. And we developed what was a very comprehensive project. Those were tiring times, but the joy of working with young people was remarkable. We also had something called Youth for the Future Summer Camp, which again was another Sterling program. And we ran for 10 years a program called Youth Path, which was funded by UNESCO for a period of 10 years. And that drew on people's talents between the ages of 18 and 23. And through that program, people visited South Africa, Paris, Martinique. And we've had a situation where some people started with us as a camper at the summer camp, then became a counselor at the summer camp, then became a youth pather, and now they're adults, engineers, doctors, and teachers. So to work with people within the community like that was one of the benefits of the Harrison's Cave Redevelopment Project, and also it showed the response of people.
For a number of years, the Heart of Barbados project was one of the attractions on the island's list of heritage products, very popular in the community and neighboring communities. It was not merely an occasion to come out and have fun, it was developmental on all fronts. You will note that Jason Lemon, who is now a tour guide at Harrison's Caves, specializing in the Eco Tour, was one of the young individuals who came through that program and developed.
Another key thing that happened throughout that, well, it took us 2 years, but we eventually pulled it off. We had a reunion of the Escorts. We got the Escorts back here and they played for one night in Sturgis. So that also was remarkable for Spooge fans and stuff like that. But the whole concept behind our work is always, and people ask, why can't you repeat this somewhere else? It's not about repeating a particular program anywhere else. It is that wherever you sit down in Barbados, there's rich talent. Whether it's St. Thomas, St. Michael, it does not matter. But you have to be prepared to acknowledge the people in the community. You have to be prepared to recognize that these people have been developmental to Barbados over the last 50 years. And now we are reaching a significant milestone. It is even more important for us to recognize that. This has never been lost on me because my grandmother used to always tell me stuff. And I mean, I used to doubt it sometimes because I reckon, my grandmother know these things, then about Panama and about Cuba and about places. And then when I started to study geography, I had to go humbly and apologize to her because I was then reading in books things that she had done because she used to travel the Caribbean with her sister who used to work with somebody who was a contractor or something like that. So her sister took her around. And it is remarkable how we as a people spread through the Caribbean. I remember being in Cuba with Nicole, she's now Nicole Allen at Tourism, she's Nicole Belden. And after a conference, we were going through the market and this guy was hassling us about getting stuff. And we says, no. And I turned to him and says, no. And then this guy blurted out, but I bet you like dumplings and gravy. So we went back to him. We said, so straight away we know he's a Bajan. So I quite naturally asked him, so how long you down here, man? He said, down here, man, I born here. And then he told me his mother was born in Cuba. He was born in Cuba, but his grandmother went to Panama and left Panama and came to Cuba. And here was this second, third generation Barbadian with a distinct Barbadian accent, knowing about the things in Barbados, but he was born Cuban. And that has always stayed with me and made me realize that I think by locating the office within St. Thomas and working within the community, for example, our technical office from the community, when we were running the Heart of Barbados, we would have as much as 120 volunteers. We doing up to 80 volunteers, and people would come out and volunteer and just do work and to make it run properly. And all of that meant that people in the community got an experience and they saw what we were doing and they were able to make a lot of valuable suggestions to the things that we were doing.
The recurring themes here are community participation and community involvement. Now, you might ask, what has this to do with art out of nature? It is all in an effort to have community members understand that the beautiful art beneath their houses is theirs to protect, is theirs to share with all of humanity, is theirs to pass on to future generations. It's their precious commodity that gives not only their community but the entire island of Barbados that competitive edge in terms of a touristic product, one which could easily win a UNESCO World Heritage Site nomination, and one which thousands will forever come to see.
By letting them see how development is working and how the redevelopment is intended, it gives them a bit of a foothold in terms of ownership. Because the peculiar thing about natural attractions is that, unlike a building or a taxi or a hotel, natural attractions depend on the elements: water, rain, sun, plants. Water flows across land. It has no respect for landmarks or whose property it is. Plants grow, they have no respect for whose property they're on. So if you're basing an attraction which is predominantly on the hydrology of the area, then you have to respect and understand that the people who are living at the surface can directly impact on what is there. And vice versa, you have to let the people know what is there is something that's part of their community. And if they see you as just coming in and mining and going up with it, then you're on a slippery slope. And hence, there was an important component of getting people to not only recognize that there will be opportunities for them, but also to recognize that we are working within their environment.
Now, you have just been given a lesson in project management and the importance of involving community members along the way. It is all part of sustainable development. Through his efforts and those of his team members, Mr. Devonish has physically transformed Harrison's Cave's surroundings, making them more inviting and comfortable for all visitors. It is no longer a case of simply being driven to the entrance of the building and shuttled through the tunnels and back to the surface for your waiting vehicle. It is now an environment of relaxation and recreation, where the beauty extends beyond the cave and can be seen and enjoyed on the grounds. Thank you very much, Mr. Devonish and team. My visit here today reminds me of an oasis, a rest from the trials of life. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. This has been Art Out of Nature.